Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a question that has become central to the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia. Was the attack on the Crimean Bridge a turning point in the conflict? We'll take a look at what happened, why it matters, how it may have shifted the dynamics of the war, and what the path forward could be. Back in 2018, Russia completed the bridge across the Kerch Strait, linking mainland Russia with the Crimean Peninsula, which Moscow had annexed in 2014. From Russia's perspective, it was a massive engineering triumph, a symbol of control, and a vital supply route connecting Russia directly to Crimea. For Ukraine, however, the bridge represented something entirely different. A symbol of occupation and a strategic artery feeding Russian military operations in the south. Destroying or disrupting, it would not just damage logistics, but also strike a psychological blow against Russia's hold on Crimea. Then came October 2022, when the bridge was hit by a powerful explosion. The blast destroyed part of the road span, caused several deaths, and disrupted both road and rail traffic. The images of flames and twisted steel racing across the Kerch Strait went viral instantly. It wasn't just a military strike, it was a message. Russia blamed Ukraine, calling it a terrorist act, while many Ukrainians celebrated it as a moment of defiance and justice. The symbolism was hard to miss. An icon of Russian strength had been shattered in spectacular fashion. Russia moved quickly to repair the damage and reinforce the bridge. But before long, in July 2023, another attack struck. This time, Ukrainian sea drones were believed to have targeted the structure, again damaging part of the road link. For Ukraine, it proved that the first explosion wasn't a one-time event. They could strike at will. And then, in June 2025, came another attack, reportedly involving underwater explosives. Each strike sent the same message: the bridge, and by extension Russia's control of Crimea, was vulnerable. Now the big question is whether these attacks truly mark a turning point in the war. Some argue that they changed everything. Others believe they were dramatic, but not decisive. To answer that, let's break down what the attacks meant in real terms. First, the symbolic power of the bridge cannot be overstated. When Russia built it, President Vladimir Putin personally drove a truck across it during the opening ceremony. It was meant to represent permanence, a physical and political bond between Crimea and Russia. When Ukraine struck it, that symbolism was shattered. It was a statement that nothing Russia built in occupied territory was safe. It was a blow to Putin's image and a boost to Ukrainian morale. Second, the logistical importance of the bridge is enormous. It connects Russia directly to Crimea and serves as a supply route for fuel, weapons, and troops supporting operations in southern Ukraine. Destroying or even temporarily disabling it forces Russia to find alternative routes, mainly through the occupied territories in southern Ukraine, which are riskier and less efficient. Every strike on the bridge complicates Russia's military planning and stretches its supply lines. Third, the attack represented a shift in Ukraine's military capability and strategy. Early in the war, Ukraine's forces were largely focused on defending territory and repelling invasions. But the bridge attack showed a new phase, one where Ukraine could project power deep into Russian-controlled areas. It wasn't just a defensive move, it was offensive, precise, and psychological. It proved that Ukraine could hit targets Russia considered untouchable. But let's also look at the other side. Was it truly a turning point? That depends on what we mean by turning point. If we mean a moment that changed the direction of the war entirely, the answer is more complicated. The bridge attacks were dramatic, but they didn't immediately change the front lines. Russia adapted, building new supply systems, rerouting logistics through land corridors, and increasing defenses around the bridge. The war continued, grinding on through attrition, artillery duels, and slow advances. Still, it's hard to deny the cumulative effect. Each attack on the bridge forced Russia to commit resources to repairs and protection, draining energy and funds that could have gone elsewhere. It also exposed weaknesses in Russia's defensive posture, showing that even heavily guarded assets could be reached. For Ukraine, it was proof of concept, the ability to disrupt, not just defend. The psychological impact was also profound. For Russians, it was a humiliation. For Ukrainians, it was hope. For the international community, it demonstrated Ukraine's growing ingenuity and persistence. It sent a message that this was not a war of static lines, but one of innovation and resilience. Every successful strike reminded the world that Ukraine still had initiative, despite being outnumbered and outgunned. There's another angle to consider: escalation. Hitting the Crimean Bridge wasn't just a tactical decision, it was a calculated risk. Every strike raised the possibility of retaliation. After the 2022 explosion, Russia unleashed a wave of missile strikes across Ukraine, targeting energy grids, cities, and infrastructure. The war became not just about soldiers and territory, but about endurance. Who could withstand the most punishment and still fight on? So, did it escalate the war? In some ways, yes. Russia responded aggressively, but the attacks also forced it to spread its focus. Protecting the bridge required resources that could have been used elsewhere, and every defensive measure made Russia more reactive and less flexible. Ukraine's strikes on the bridge also drew attention to the growing sophistication of its unmanned systems, sea drones, long-range missiles, and covert sabotage operations. The balance of innovation was shifting. By mid-2024, intelligence reports suggested that Russia had significantly reduced the use of the bridge for military freight. Instead, it relied more on the so-called land corridor running through Mariupol and Melitopol. This adaptation showed that the attacks were having real, practical effects. Even if the bridge was still standing, its utility had been compromised. That's not a total victory, but it's a strategic success. Still, the war's complexity means no single event can define it completely. The bridge attacks were crucial moments, but they didn't single-handedly end or transform the conflict. Ukraine still faces immense challenges: stretched supply lines, limited ammunition, and the need for continued Western support. Russia, despite its setbacks, retains significant resources and defensive depth. Both sides are fighting not only on the battlefield, but also in the information and psychological arenas. Yet, if we look at history, wars often hinge not on one event, but on a series of moments that collectively shift perception and momentum. The Crimean Bridge attacks fit that pattern. Each strike chipped away at Russia's image of invulnerability and strengthened Ukraine's narrative of persistence. Each explosion echoed a message: this war is not frozen, and Ukraine can strike back anywhere. For Ukraine, this was about more than damaging infrastructure. It was about legitimacy and morale. It showed its people and its allies that Crimea, long seen as untouchable, was still part of the fight. That mattered deeply to the Ukrainian public. It reaffirmed the goal of liberation and kept the issue of Crimea at the center of the conversation. For Russia, the attacks raised uncomfortable questions. How could such a critical asset, supposedly one of the most protected structures in the region, be hit multiple times? What did that say about Russia's control? Each incident forced the Kremlin to balance pride with pragmatism, admitting vulnerability while trying to maintain the image of dominance. In the broader picture, these attacks also had diplomatic ripple effects. They reminded Western allies that Ukraine's war effort remained active and capable. They encouraged continued military support and demonstrated that advanced Western weapons and Ukrainian ingenuity were making a difference. Now, when we ask if the Crimean Bridge attack was the turning point, it depends on what happens next. A turning point only becomes clear in hindsight when we can see how events unfold afterward. If Ukraine continues to press logistical and symbolic targets, leveraging the vulnerabilities exposed by the bridge attacks, then yes, this could be remembered as a pivotal moment. If, however, the war drags on with little change, the attacks may be seen more as milestones than turning points. Still, one thing is undeniable: the bridge strikes transformed the psychological landscape of the war. They proved that Russia's grip on Crimea is not absolute, and that Ukrainian reach extends farther than many thought possible. In a conflict driven as much by perception as by territory, that psychological shift could be as powerful as any territorial gain. Ultimately, whether the bridge attacks mark the turning point or not, they represent a clear evolution of the conflict. They showed Ukraine's determination to fight smart, to use precision over brute force, and to redefine what success looks like in modern warfare. They also reminded the world that symbols matter, and breaking them can shake nations as much as breaking armies. So, was it the turning point? Maybe not yet, but it might be the spark that leads to one. A war is often a chain of moments, and this was one that changed how both sides see the future. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to keep up with the latest insights on global conflicts and history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Was the Crimean Bridge attack the moment that changed everything, or is the real turning point still to come? Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.